Hey, welcome everybody. The Buddha and then the Kruba Ajahns and our tradition rely heavily on nature metaphors to talk about the Dhamma. And it makes a lot of sense because the Dhamma, what we refer to as the Dhamma, is the teachings of the Buddha, but it's also the truth, sort of the universal principles that things function according to. When things are in line with nature, aligned with nature, then they're the Dhamma. And for me, that's comes up a lot in the garden. I don't know if anybody else uses their garden as a place of practice. But for me, it's everything's quite obvious. That's something is born, it lives its life, it dies. That's a principle of the Dhamma. Anicca, everything is impermanent. I put in causes and conditions, and yet the plants do what they want. Sometimes not in accordance with my preferences, or not on the timeline that I prefer, or not in the way that I expected. And that's a lesson in anatta. It's they don't these plants, this earth, even these procedures, they're not me, they're not mine, they don't belong to me, I didn't make them up. I'm doing the best that I can to align my work with the laws of nature, the principles of nature. And of course, dukkha, which in this tradition is translated as, that which is not inherently satisfying. And it's really sort of one way that you can think of dukkha is anicca plus anatta, impermanence plus not mine equals not satisfying. When something's functioning according to the laws of nature, it's not worried about me. So, ultimately my job is to steward the garden. Like if I've decided to garden, then my job is to put in the causes and conditions to steward the plants the best that I can, to steward the soil, and let nature take its course and reap the fruits as they come. This year I had a lot of complaints. Everything, a lot of dukkha. Everything didn't want to grow and took forever, and I had to re-sow, and it was months, and then the cucumbers were bitter, and essentially, what my garden saw like 15 times a day this year was this. Come on, guys, do the things. But what I decided is this year that my favorite gardening responsibility is picking beans. Pole beans. Does anyone do pole beans? Are there pole bean people? Okay. That was a dukkha face. Okay. Pole beans are not going too well. There you go. So mine took a long time to come in. But I'm not a particularly tidy gardener either. And so when I plant pole beans, they're everywhere. Like they're had this 6-foot teepee, but the pole beans are 10 feet tall. And then they leapt over the fence and now they're outside the yard. And I got to, unlock the fence to collect the rest of the pole beans. And like in the past, they grew them up. They ended up growing up the trampoline. I had to send the kids in the trampoline to like jump and pick the beans off the net, I'm not a very efficient gardener, but I do have a lot of fun. Probably I could look deeper into that. But what I find myself doing is with the pole beans, as I really enjoy the thrill of the hunt because it's complete chaos. So I go out there. If you've ever, grown pole beans, you want to get them like at just the right size before they get too big and make the whole plant stop growing. You don't want to get them too skinny. Huge leaves, they're all hiding behind the leaves. And so what I end up doing is sort of like looking at eye level and then crouching way down and looking up through the middle of the teepee. Okay, I got one person in here really who gets this. Yeah. Looking up through the middle of the teepee and then sort of like shaking the teepee because if there's beans hanging, they'll shake and then you can see them. Otherwise they just look like the leaf stems. And then I got to go around the back of the teepee. And then, in my case this year, it's always a different year, I got to go out the gate and find the rest of them on the outside of the yard because they got away. They just did what they do, which is get away. But I love this. I love this, like looking from all the angles. I love sort of seeking out kind of the ripe beans everywhere, getting as many as I can, and then at some point saying, I gotta be done. I gotta go inside. I can't. I didn't even bring, this wasn't even the plan. I don't even have a bowl. I'm carrying, this is my, like the bean satchel. But, when you've been doing this practice a long time, this Dhamma practice, everything looks like Dhamma. And so as I'm doing this, engaged in this, I'm realizing that this is really the way that I like to look at Dhamma too, like at Dhamma, at pieces of the practice, at pieces of the teaching. Because I've been doing this for 22 years or something, and I know when I come in contact with something, I know that it will help me if I can understand it, you know. I know that if I can find a way in to a teaching, that it will brighten my mind. But I can't always find my way in. Some things just are obscure. They're not obscure, but to me, they're just not clear. I haven't had enough experience to really understand something or to apply it in the right way. And so what I really enjoy doing with the Dhamma is, once something sort of catches my attention, I'm looking at it from all the angles. I'm under it, I'm behind it, I'm out the gate, I'm, just searching for the doorway. I'm searching for the way in. And this last month or two, I've been playing with looking for knocking on the door of forgiveness. Because I know that if I can understand forgiveness, if I can find the way in to forgiveness, it will brighten the mind. It will open up my heart. But forgiveness is this word that I just can't, I come from sort of a Judeo-Christian background, and there's a lot of overlay with forgiveness. And then even in our tradition, there's this beautiful term, abaya, and often we'll translate it as the gift of fearlessness, like acting in a way that allows other people to feel safe with us. But it's also forgiveness. Abaya dana means the gift of forgiveness. So that helps, the gift of forgiveness. But the questions come up, being a Westerner, a person in this world, a person in this brain and body, like, well, who am I forgiving and how am I forgiving them? And do they even need to be involved? Whose job is it to do the forgiving? And I finally found a sort of a beautiful door in. There have been a lot of talks on on the Abhayagiri website about forgiveness lately. So maybe it's in the air, but it's been quite useful. This reframing that I've received by looking deeper, listening to the Dhamma, talking to teachers, and forgiveness. Can be looked at, can be described as, it's very useful for me as the letting go of grudges. So I know. Letting go of grudges. And that I can wrap my head around because it doesn't involve anybody else. I don't have to make anybody do anything. I don't have to jump into a repair process that I'm not ready for. I've got my own timeline that I don't even really always understand. But if I'm looking at forgiveness as letting go of a grudge toward another person, then that's work that I can do by myself, independently, with the Dhamma. And it benefits me, but also it benefits everyone that I come in contact with. It might end up benefiting a person that I have a grudge toward, but the act of forgiving, the act of letting go of a grudge, brightens the mind, it brightens the heart. It opens up this space for unconditional love, for metta, for compassion, for gladness, for balance. And that's work that I can do independently, which is very sweet. And then if there's, a repair process that needs to be done, I can engage in that. But first, I can do the work of letting go. I was listening to a talk this morning by Ajahn Nyanaiko, who's down at Abhayagiri, and it was an older talk, but he was talking about. He sort of said letting go off the cuff, and then he said, "What is letting go?" And you could almost hear like the leaning in, because I think letting go. What is letting? Wait, what is letting go? I think that's a question that a lot of people that are new or even not new to Buddhism have. What does that mean? What is letting go? What does that look like? And in that moment, and if you listen to monks in our tradition, you'll never hear the same answer. You'll not always hear the same answer twice or the same definition of something twice, because they're always developing their practice. They're always, looking at the beanpole from a bunch of different angles. But in this moment, he defined it as um, having an appropriate response. Letting go is having an appropriate response to this stimulus. So, like if this, uh, so this looks like a metal, but it's not. It's quite breakable, actually. I found out after 18 years of handling it. It's get walking up and down the stairs with it, carrying it in one hand, like it actually could shatter. And if it did, what would letting go mean? What would I do in the moment? So letting go wouldn't mean that I went, oh, well, easy come, easy go, anicca, anicca. That's not letting go, you know. But also, when we beat ourselves up, when we feel, intense shame, when we're feeling very guilty, that isn't letting go either. That isn't an appropriate response either. Letting go would look like maybe this fell, maybe it broke. Letting go would look like that was recognizing it as unfortunate, something that needed repair. Yeah, actually, I need to repair this, or I need to replace it. And then looking at what this, even talking about this makes me want to stop touching it. And then looking at what I could have done differently to prevent that. So, what in the future could I do to not break something sort of precious and belonging to our community? So, that is a process of letting go, seeing things for what they are, and learning from the process and learning from the results. That's how we can let go quicker and quicker and quicker to sort of stay out of that like spiral of negativity, but also not sort of bypassing our responsibility to something. And we can do this also with forgiveness, like with grudges that we have in relationships. I don't need to spiral into negativity, and sort of beat myself up for not knowing what to do, not being able to let go, not, having these negative feelings. But also, I don't want to dip into sort of drugs and alcohol or excessive sort of distractions either. I don't want to bypass this. I see that there's pain and I want to look at it. I want to observe. I want to see if I can let go, bring up an appropriate response. Oh, this is painful. Can I let the painful feelings pass through? Can I see when they pass through, and can I remember how I helped them pass through? That's the cessation of suffering. That's the cessation of dukkha. And then if we want to approach the specific scenario or whatever it is, or we have a person in our life, or maybe that person's passed, maybe there's no contact, maybe there's this person is a celestial being at this point. That is a really, really good lesson about letting go of grudges, right? When there's no object at all, there's no person at all to put through a process. It helps us see that the process is ours alone. Letting go of grudges, letting go, letting go. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that and encourage us all to be looking through the lens of Dhamma, even our silly overabundance of pole beans, or whatever's coming up, whatever we're looking at, if it's acting in line with nature or natural results or natural karma, then it is as it should be. And then our job is to do our part and go from there. Thank you.